Pri, thank you. Thank you so much for taking your time to do this. I so appreciate this because now you're a medical student, aren't
Yes,
you?
that's right. Yeah.
Wonderful. What year are you in?
Fifth year actually. I'm finished fourth year, so be
Uh,
graduating next year.
oh, lovely. Oh, great. Because just to have another medical professional on board talking about their experience with feeding their own dog, and you've got absolutely gorgeous boys. He's still there, Mr.
Well,
Frank.
he's lying down now. I can.
Is he
Hi.
lying down? Frank.
Who's that?
Oh, he's just an absolute beauty. Is it a retriever that you've always
Yeah.
wanted?
Yeah. So we've had a golden retriever in the past called Daffy, and she sadly passed away in December. She was almost 14.
Oh,
But yes.
oh, so you had to replace with another. And
Yeah.
how old is Frank now?
Frank is 8.5 months old.
Oh gosh, so he's still really young.
Yeah, he's a
Wow, I didn't
baby.
realize he looks so bright for his age.
Yeah. Call him an old soul. It's as if, he's lived this life before and he's just a really little intelligent little chap.
Yeah, fitted in where your other dog left off, really. Yes,
Yeah.
I imagine. And your was she plant-based as well?
He
Your
was predominantly, yes, probably about 95% plant-based. And
well,
sadly, the reason why she passed away was because my parents did overfeed her quite a lot.
uh,
And she put on a lot of weight, and it was her hips that went, her back legs. And she just mentally, she was fine. She had no other problems, but it was her back legs. She actually couldn't walk towards the final stages. She couldn't get up. And then we had to
yeah.
make the decision, to let her go, which was really difficult because
Yeah.
it's
And
just,
do you know it must have been so hard for you, Pri, because I mean, you see it in humans,
yeah.
is obesity causes so many issues. And obviously as a vet, I see it so commonly. But it's done out of pure love. And the more disabled or the more elderly or the more uncomfortable, not uncomfortable, but yes, I think disabled and elderly, the more as owners or carers, we really want to treat our dogs. And that's what your mum and dad would have done. They would have felt so sorry for her and given her that little pleasure in life, which would have been her food
Exactly.
and treats. And I bet it would have been, yeah, oh, such sadness. And then you must have been so torn. So at least now, Frank, you've got full control over everything.
Exactly. Because I used to tell my parents all the time, you don't have to show your love through giving them excess food, because that's
Yeah,
actually, as hard as it is to not do that, it
yeah,
ends up with so many problems, and it's something that can be prevented, obesity. So I think
absolutely.
with Frank, I'd want to make sure that he's just a healthy weight throughout his life. I think it's one of the
Yes,
key things for
perfect.
him.
Perfect, because I know you've been absolutely fantastic. You've done all your research, and obviously the main concern that you have and you're aware of with golden retrievers, we'll just dive straight in, is the concern of dilated cardiomyopathy.
Yeah, of
So,
course.
so as a breed, genetically, yes, they can develop it. They didn't used to in the past, but interestingly, it's become a condition that we normally used to just see it in the giant breeds, in the
Yeah.
wolfhounds and the greyhound and the real big breeds. But now it has become a lot more prevalent genetically
Mm.
in golden retrievers, which I know you're fully aware of.
Yeah.
So yes, so the ways to overcome it. Well, you explain what you've learned and with all the research
Yeah.
you've done
So
of how to.
So I think, obviously that was one of my main concerns, is you hear all these things about um, grain-free diets causing, cardiomyopathy, or you hear about removing meat from the diet is going to cause cardiomyopathy, or basically there's just I think a lot of scaremongering around that, actually, because people didn't look at the research properly, which is what you've clearly explained as well, and what I've done to show that actually it's a deficiency in the taurine, which can cause or increase the chances of them developing that cardiomyopathy. So I think with any diet, if it's not nutritionally complete and balanced, then yes, you are going to increase the risk of them developing that condition. But with the food that Frank's on, and with all the supplements that you make, that contains everything that he needs to ensure that that's not going to be the cause. If he does end up developing that, I just want to be sure in myself that it wasn't the diet, so that's why I wanted to do the research and
Absolutely.
make sure that he's getting the right levels of the taurine, and the other amino acids that are essential for that. So
and you really hit it on the head there with our choices that we make as owners, as carers for our dogs, is the most emotional decision that you can make. And the decision for you and I are professionals, but everybody becomes a professional. But you become a nutritionist when you want to feed your dog.
exactly.
And if you've made the choice and your dog develops something, that to me just would fill you with just too much guilt. And where you said that there's, at least you have the knowledge that he could develop this. So if he was to develop it, if he did have the gene for dilated cardiomyopathy, and yes, maybe when he's 8, 9, and suddenly you're having to start giving him heart medication, which is actually the same medication as you give to humans, very expensive medication, but at least you've covered yourself.
Yes, exactly. I think,
and
at the end of the day, as owners, everybody wants to look back at their dog's life and think, I did everything I could do for them to live a healthy and happy life. And I think with there's such a wealth of information out there, it can be quite overwhelming, depending on where you look, what to follow. But I think if you just look sort of at the facts, at the science, and see what the evidence says, I think then you can make a really well-informed choice of what to feed your dog.
Absolutely. And just going back, so you mentioned taurine, which definitely is one of the amino acids that we know it used to be lacking in cat food diets in the 90s. And all cats were developing dilated cardiomyopathy. When I was working as a vet in the 90s, was something so prevalent, was to see a cat. All the pet foods then cat foods realized they needed to add extra taurine in, which they did, and we don't see it at all anymore in cats. So we know that taurine definitely makes that difference. But in order for taurine to be absorbed in the body, that extra taurine, you do need high levels of vitamin B.
Yeah.
Which we know that the diets that he has would have that. And the third thing that's the most important for heart health is adequate omega-3s. And a lot of owners tend to make the error with plant-based feeding of going down the route of flax seeds. I don't know if you've read about that. Have you?
So what we use, what you suggest, is the algae oil.
The algae oil, absolutely. Because with flax seeds, we absorb flax seeds really well in our body, but flaxseed has to be converted, the ALA, which is the type of fatty acid, has to be converted into EPA and DHA. And it happens fine in our bodies, so we're able to then get it with flaxseed, but actually in dogs, it doesn't happen well, that conversion. It was one of the top nutritionists, Marge Chandler, who taught me that, and the vet nutritionists in the UK. So algae oil, and it was the most wonderful human doctor. I was helping her little dog with, she has renal failure, very sadly. And she recommends to her patients, she recommends this Norsan algae oil, which has got the highest, purest levels of the, but it's also got the vitamin D3 as well, which is also so important, isn't it? Because there's a calcium, you need calcium for healthy so the vitamin D3 helps with all of that. So you're covering all your bases with your Frank. Oh my goodness, he's a lucky dog.
He really is. I always say, I think our dogs eat better than us.
They do, and we put far more research. But it's the same. It's with everything we do. I mean, I have, and I've always had our pets insured with medical pet care insurance. I would never have thought of having my poor children getting them private health care, because your children are, your pets are just far more important with everything. And your choice with your previous dog, sorry, what was her name again? Was it Daphne? Daphne. I thought it was Daphne. I love the name Daphne. So the choice for Daphne to be 95% plant-based, and the choice for Frank, where does it come from?
So my parents are vegetarian. They were born and brought up, in India, where it's really common for people to be vegetarian. And I've been vegetarian my whole life, but then about 7 years ago, I decided to go vegan for ethical reasons. When I found out where dairy comes from and where eggs come from, I was kind of, quite shocked at what happens to the dairy cows. And it was just a complete eye-opener for me. I think once you make that connection with animals in general, and you really start to see how horrific those industries actually are, and
Yes.
that we can live healthy and we can thrive on a plant-based diet, particularly for
Yeah.
humans. And then especially because coming from like a medical background, you see so many of the chronic health conditions that can actually be, you know, I don't like to use the word prevented. I prefer to say you can reduce your risk of getting them,
Good point.
many
Yes,
of those things. And you can
absolutely.
also reverse some of the chronic health conditions as well on a plant-based diet that's
Yeah,
balanced. And I think, I think there is quite a big overlap between dogs and humans in terms of, the research I've done, we're 95% genetically similar to dogs, which is quite surprising. But there's
yeah.
a lot of the health conditions that dogs have, are similar to what humans get as well. And I think I was reading a paper the other day and it was saying 400 to 500 diseases in humans are actually prevalent in dogs as well.
Yes.
You just think when you know all that information, and both ethically it's obviously better for the animals, environmentally the carbon footprint of our pets can be massive, and you think 25 to 30% of all carbon emissions comes from the pet food industry, and you think, knowing that, what can we do if there's a way to feed your pet with, that's kind of the planet, that's better for the environment, that still provides them with all the health and the nutrition that they need. It was kind of an obvious choice for me
A
after that.
no-brainer. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well done. Oh, no, no, no. Everything you're saying just spot on, because as well, you're the next generation, you're the millennial generation. And so it's hearing your words that I'm hoping other young carers who've taken on dogs themselves will listen to you, and just your wise words, because it's a future that we've got to go into.
it really
And you're so right, 25% of animals and is due to be added to pet food.
is.
And there's absolutely no need, because our dogs can be as healthy and as happy. And Frank, he loves his food, doesn't he? I mean, you put up pictures of Frank on your Instagram and just
He does.
gorgeous. But he always looks happy. He's just got a smile on his face.
Yes.
Yes,
He especially loves the Fleetful, the home cooking that we do.
brilliant.
So I
Oh,
tend to, obviously because he's still a puppy, he gets majority of his calories from the puppy food, the formulated food. But he also has the Fleetful home cooking, and he just loves it. He loves to watch me cook. He sits in the kitchen. He comes and smells, I let him smell everything that I'm making. And
yeah.
you can almost tell that they know that you're cooking for them. So
Yes, absolutely, because you've primed him. Is all the actions that you're going to be doing in the kitchen is associated with him. So it's the most wonderful feeling, isn't it?
it
To
really
have
is. Yeah.
him, yes, to have him watching you. You feel so warm inside that, because
Yeah.
normally with children, as you try to feed them their greens, I mean, Fleetful is so incredibly nutrient rich, and it comes out looking, a child wouldn't want those greens, those healthy things, but you put it in front of a dog and they go
Love it.
absolutely mad for
Exactly.
it, because they smell the nutrients in it. That's what they get. Yeah.
And just a bit about him from before. So he initially started on a meat-based kibble. Then I switched him onto raw. So he was on raw for a little while,
Oh,
which is
okay.
obviously quite a transition from going from raw
Yeah.
to plant-based, especially
Wow.
being an ethical vegan. That was quite difficult for me to feed him raw. But
And what was your decision to try the raw? Is
so
that
it
from
was, I think
research?
it was, just a lot of people saying that it's best for them, and knowing that, although I know that they're omnivores, but thinking that, are their digestive tracts more suited to a meat-based diet? And I went through that whole process of slowly doing more and more research, and
Yes.
I needed to obviously convince myself through the research that he could be fed a plant-based diet. And I think it's not just that, it's so multifactorial, this decision, because you think of just the pandemic,
Yeah.
zoonotic diseases, 3 out of every 4 pandemics have a zoonotic origin,
Yeah.
and the majority of that comes from animal agriculture. So
Yeah.
think about how difficult life has been for people over the last couple of years, and that's another incentive. And then you've got the antibiotics that used for meat, and antibiotic resistance. And obviously coming from a medical background, you sort of think we're so lucky to have antibiotics, but we overuse them in animal agriculture primarily for the animals that we eat, that we don't need to eat. And so all of these reasons put together, and knowing that yes, they do have the dogs do have that enzyme, you know, the amylase that they need to digest
Exactly.
the starches.
They have genetically developed it. Yeah.
Exactly, and they have, we have domesticated them. They're not wolves. And I think a lot of people think,
Yes.
oh, but you know, if they were in the wild, they'd eat meat, but they're not in the wild, and they haven't been for a very, very long time. And I think sometimes
Yeah.
you have to look at the fact that, you know, if they couldn't thrive on a plant-based diet, we wouldn't have any healthy plant-based dogs around, but we do. And there's,
We do.
you know,
And yes, and they're proving to be healthier than other
exactly.
dogs that have
And
been.
just in terms of, you know, being hypoallergenic as well, because when he was on the raw, I know that you have to feed a variety of proteins for it to be balanced. You can't just feed them chicken or just the turkey. You have to feed them at least 5 or 6 different animal proteins. And I was seeing, like, occasionally if I'd switch the protein, he'd have really bad stools, and it was just, he'd start itching his paws, and he got 3 yeast infections, which he had to have drops
Oh,
for.
wow, and he
And
was so young.
yeah, and since switching, touch
Yeah.
wood, you know, he's been absolutely fine, and he's a nice healthy weight. He's stopped the itching. He's,
Yeah.
you know, I just feel like he's better overall. And if this wasn't working for him, you know, I wouldn't, just because of my ethics, I wouldn't put that on him. But
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
benefiting him whilst also benefiting the planet and the environment, you know, I'm just extremely happy with
Yeah.
that choice.
Wonderful, well done. And there was just, while you were talking, there was just one thing that I wanted to mention is you were mentioning how similar we are, and you're saying they're genetically 95% similar, but they've actually done studies of our gut microbiome, which I mean, you're fully aware how
Mhm.
important the gut
Yeah,
a healthy gut micro. We all are aware
yeah,
of healthy gut microbiomes now, not just for our physical health, but actually for our mental health as
yeah,
well. But they've done studies where families all share the same gut microbiome, and actually we share the same gut microbiome with our dogs, because even the water that you drink in certain parts of the UK affects your gut microbiome. So I find that absolutely fascinating, because obviously if you've got a healthy gut microbiome, you're going to be a healthy family.
yeah,
So it means that if you're giving your dog the same food as you, which you are, we all are, and obviously plant-based, you've got the highest amount of fibers, you've actually got the healthiest gut
yeah,
microbiome. You really are fully supporting the whole family's health, in every respect. So yes. Oh no, been so interesting talking to you. Gosh, yes. Thank you. Is there anything else you think that could? I think you've been wonderful with what
yeah.
you've said.
I think just the only other thing is that the issue, that, you know, the topic of cancer, with cancer being so prevalent in dogs, and especially Frank being a golden retriever, they have one of the highest, if I'm not wrong, they have one of the highest cancer rates for their breed. So again, it's like, you can't prevent cancer, but you can do lots of things to reduce their risk of cancer. And I think same with humans anyway, it's only 5 to 10% of all cancers are genetic. So you think about how much we can do to reduce our risk is
Yes. Yeah.
crosses over to what we can do for our dogs as well. So I think that was another big motivating factor for me.
Yeah. And can I just say, Pri, you're going to make the most wonderful doctor. I bet you
Thanks.
already are. I know you're still a student, but you'll make a wonderful doctor. Because I love what, instead of saying preventing, I so love your use of reducing the risk, because
Yeah,
that's exactly what we're doing for ourselves and for our pets. Is
exactly.
we're reducing risk, of cancer, reducing risk of the any heart conditions, reducing risk of arthritis is a huge one in golden retrievers, which I know
Yeah,
you saw with Daphne,
yeah,
where
no,
she wouldn't have been
it's
able to
so
stand.
heartbreaking, you know.
Heartbreaking. Arthritis is absolutely heartbreaking, and as soon as you diagnose it in your pet as a bad arthritis, you have to mentally prepare yourself for the decision to put your animal to sleep, because they will not be able to stand at one point. And so arthritis, if we can reduce the risk of arthritis, that is another massively important
Exactly.
one.
I always, you know, I always try and explain it to patients similar to, why do we wear a seatbelt in a car? Because it
Yes,
would reduce our risk of getting a serious injury, but it doesn't
that's
mean
right.
that we won't get a serious injury if we have a bad
Yes,
car accident. You know, same with,
yes,
why do we look both ways before crossing the road? Well, it
yeah.
reduces our chances of getting hit,
Mm,
but there still might be some crazy driver on the road who comes and, you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
hits you. So it's literally, that's all I
absolutely.
think. majority of what we do in our life is reducing our risk of certain
Reducing our risk.
events,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Perfect. Wonderful. I need to stop. Thank you so much.
You're
I
so
need to
welcome.
stop the recording.